Good morning, everyone. I am the Reverend William Levwood, affectionately known as Rev Lev. My pronouns are he and him, and I am overjoyed every single day to be the minister here at Accotink, Unitarian Universalist Church. And I'm so happy that you decided to join us this Sunday. And as we always do, we're going to center ourselves for worship by taking a deep breath or two together. We open and welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land who live on in their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Piscataway Indian Tribe of Virginia, and the Patawomic Indian Tribe of Virginia and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all together shall one day know full justice.
Welcome to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Sheila Doles. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm happy to be your worship associate today. If you aren't new to Accotink, look around. Do you see people you haven't met or haven't spoken to in a while? These people like you and want to meet you. Help us live up to our mission to be a welcoming and inclusive spiritual home for all by reaching out and making a connection. By visiting this congregation, newcomers are in a transition moment, and people in transitions are more open to new friendships. That means that your new best friend might be here this morning, and this is your chance to get to them before someone else does. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we encourage you to stay for our social hour online and in person immediately after the service. We're so delighted that you decided to join us today.
So our theme this month is building belonging, and if you ask me, it's actually the underlying theme for the entire church year, and maybe for our faith tradition as Unitarian Universalists as well. 2 Sundays ago, when we celebrated ingathering with our water communion, I talked about the theological house for hope that we have as Unitarian Universalists, and that's not just about the question of God or not God. In fact, it isn't primarily about that at all, but it's about the big questions of who are we as human beings? What's the nature of the world? What is the goal that we're, as a human society, working towards? How do we respond to evil? How do we organize ourselves into groups, into congregations? And what mission do we have? Or what message do we have? And mission do we have to share with the world at large? So we sang that Sunday some adapted lyrics, some new lyrics to the song Sanctuary. We sang some lyrics that talked about being visionaries, of telling the story, sharing the story of love's glory, that Unitarian Universalist vision. And we focused a lot in that service on that vision. And so I'm going to recap for you in brief that vision, which is that we live in a world, and human nature is such that we can be good and we can make a world where everybody flourishes. The potential for that is built into how nature and human society and human nature works. And because of that, our end goal, that's our starting place, our end goal is to make it even more so that we live in a diverse, multicultural, beloved community where all beings are sacred and can flourish and thrive. Okay, so that's the foundation and the end goal. Last Sunday, then we zeroed in on how we start to do that, and we do that in our small groups, in our sanctuaries, both the small group of this congregation and all the small groups within this congregation where you can deepen your connections with each other, really get to know each other, really cross whatever boundaries and differences that might get in the way of connecting until you get to the point where you can actually celebrate your differences and your commonalities and the diversity that makes us strong. So that's how we organize ourselves as Unitarian Universalists, or what's called ecclesiology in systematic theology. This Sunday, we're going to talk about missiology, which is that message and mission that we have. So once we make ourselves strong by practicing and embracing all-inclusive, building, belonging kind of sanctuary, then we act as revolutionaries of love, of liberating love, by building coalitions, because we are small, right? I mentioned that when I was in Pittsburgh a couple years ago, for our Unitarian Universalist General Assembly, Taylor Swift happened to be in town at the same time for her Eras tour. And there were almost as many people who came to see her concert in 2 nights put together as there are Unitarian Universalists in the whole nation. So we need to be building connections and coalitions and solidarity with lots and lots of people if we're going to make this vision of a diverse, multicultural, beloved community where all beings are sacred and thrive a reality. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So with that in mind, I invite you to rise in body or in spirit for our chalice lighting. Please say the words with me. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Love will guide us. I just want to say I saw a couple people bumping each other. That's a good way to be embodied as well. Spread the love with a little bump.
Well, we're going to spread some love this morning. I am Michelle Anderson. I use the pronoun she, her, and I'm delighted to be your Children and Youth Spiritual Development Director. I'm going to read you a story today, but while I'm doing that, Rev Lev is going to pass out. Anybody remember those Find It in the highlights? Right? I'm dating myself a little bit, but if you would like to find all these animals in our story, raise your hand, and Rev Lev will pass one out to you. And while he's doing that, I will tell you that my story is the Everybody Club. It is a true story. And if you want to hear about how it got started, it will kind of really touch your heart. It's not in the story, it's in the back of the story, and I'd be happy to tell you all about it after service. But the story is called The Everybody Club. It's by Nancy Lowen and Linda Hayen, and it's illustrated by Yana Zabina. All right. So look, keep your eyes peeled. Are you big? Are you small? Are you loud? Are you shy? Do you smile? Do you dream? Do you laugh? Do you try? Then follow me. way. The Everybody Club needs you today. Here's your badge. Come on, let's go. We've got lots to do and a club to grow. Anybody find the cat? Did you make a mistake? Did you drop the ball? Are you sad sometimes? Are you scared you'll fall? Don't you worry. No harm done. That's just life for everyone. The Everybody Club needs members just like you. Brave and strong and tough and true. So many people. They're members too. They belong like me and you. Tell them all, you're a member. It's official. The Everybody Club is beneficial. I think there's a dog in this one somewhere. Wish, plan, snip, clip, shake, shake, roll. Paint, pound, blow, show, jump, flip, twirl. Thanks for joining. Isn't this fun? The Everybody Club gets things done. Spread the word. Whisper it. Shake on it. Send it in a note. Sing it. Shout it. Put it on a flute. There's several animals in that one. See if you can find them. A parade of everybody's. A jolly jamboree. The Everybody Club turns they to we.
The following is from Bell Hook's essay, Love as the Practice of Freedom. The moment we choose to love, we begin to move against domination, against oppression. The moment we choose to love, we begin to move toward freedom, to act in ways that liberate ourselves and others. That action is the testimony of love as the practice of freedom.
I called this sermon Y'all Means All, which is a LGBTQ plus slogan, really encouraging us that y'all means all. But if we expand that really in the biggest way possible. It's challenging to do at this time, isn't it? This nation has been extremely polarized in many moments in its history. What's different this time is not the degree. It isn't worse than in past eras, two of which resulted in wars, the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. What's different this time is the nature of the polarization, which is starkly partisan. We are starkly divided along partisan lines, and that division distorts our vision of reality. Our loyalty to our side, regardless of which side it is, our loyalty to our side and our fear and loathing of the other side makes us see reality incorrectly. I'll say more about this later. This partisan polarization is not an easy problem to fix because it reinforces itself in myriad feedback loops which exasperate the problem, that increase the polarization again and again. So what do we need to do? We need to make a bigger tent. And in doing so, we need to be resolute in opposing injustice and oppression. As Bell Hooks said, that when we choose love, we do oppose injustice and oppression and domination. But we need to be resolute in imposing injustice and oppression while making a bigger tent, while inviting people into our movement. And we need to make a bigger tent while being resolute in opposing justice, and we need to invite more and more people. It's not one or the other. That's what I mean in this sermon when I say y'all means all. We cannot crimp on any of our values. We cannot and will not throw any marginalized groups under the bus for the sake of unity or electoral victory. Y'all means all. And we need to grow the tent, inviting people in who we don't agree with on everything, finding common ground on core things, building a better, stronger coalition with those who share our values but sometimes interpret them differently. Y'all means all. So a little bit of context. We already have in this country minority rule. We claim to have a democracy, but we are not led by the majority in this country. Some examples. The Electoral College means that the same number of people in 13 small states get 26 senators as Californians with the same population as those 13 small states who only get 2 senators. We've seen an increase in gerrymandering of state legislators. 50-50 states end up with 80% of the state legislators coming from the same party. Usually, but not always, the Republican Party. And this benefits, let me talk about the Supreme Court first, right? Because they have empowered this gerrymandering. And I'm not a centrist. I think my values, our UU values, are the right values. And I actually just want us to win. I want to be real. But if there is anywhere that I want fair-minded, nonpartisan centrist, it's on the Supreme Court. But the court is handing down decisions at odds with the desires of most Americans, desires that Americans support by supermajorities, 65, 75% on issues like abortion and gun control. And all of this benefits only one group of people: the wealthy, the super wealthy, and the politicians they prop up and keep in power to do their bidding instead of serving the needs of everyday Americans. And let me just say, both parties are ruled by those super wealthy donors to a large degree, and have been for all of my lifetime at least. I turned 49 in October, by the way, if you're wondering how long a span that is. So it's been a while. So our nation does have checks and balances, but the unfortunate thing, as Ezra Klein points out in his book, Why We Are Polarized, is that our nation's checks and balances were designed for different dangers than we face today. At the founding of our country, regional differences played a crucial role. That's why we have things like the Electoral College to give states more power, to balance the regional differences. That's where the tensions were at the founding between the industrial North and the slavery-based economy of the rural South. That is not the danger today. Regional identity has faded. Most Americans identify as Americans. Few today identify strongly as Virginians or Oregonians, Alabamans or Kansans. And even the rural-city divide that we hear so much about is less pronounced and primary than past regional identities. Many city dwellers grew up in the country or in a small town surrounded by cornfields in Kansas. Today, the danger is a society sharply divided along partisan lines. And this growing polarization stacks like identities on top of identities on top of identities, so that a liberal today shares few identity overlaps with a conservative, and vice versa. And this is important because group identity is powerful. I said earlier that it distorts our view of reality. So I don't think I should have to say this, but of course, we oppose all political violence, right? So we oppose the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But I want to be clear, if I watch a Charlie Clark video and he argues convincingly against my views and values, it doesn't make me convinced. On the contrary, I will be even more sure that I'm right and he's wrong, and I'm going to be shoring up my arguments as if I were the one in the debate so that I could prove him wrong. And if you agree with Charlie Clark and you watch a video where the debater gets the best of him, I guarantee you that just like me, that person is not convinced, except for being even more convinced that their original viewpoint is correct. So those videos are not bridging the partisan divide, they are exacerbating it. They are mobilizing the most extreme views among us and within us. And there's study after study that prove this, that show that we get facts wrong. We get basic math wrong when our group identities are mobilized. There's studies that show that you can show people two different policies on welfare, the more generous one and the less generous one, but what determines what the person will say they support is what party they're told supports which view. So even though we would think a more generous one probably is on the liberal side, if you are told, and you're a liberal or a Democrat, that the Democrats support the less generous welfare program, you will support that, studies show. And vice versa, if conservatives are told that the really generous welfare programs are supported by a Republican, they'll say, oh, I support that one. It distorts our view of reality. We can't even do basic math right. These group identities are so powerful. This is because the real battle isn't between competing ideas, but between competing identities. Identities rooted in group identities where to go against the group comes at a high cost. We need belonging, and we're not going to give it up just because someone from the other side of the aisle, who we didn't trust to begin with, gives us convincing evidence of whatever it is. We know this from the climate change movement, right? The climate crisis, that when we give facts, it doesn't change climate deniers' minds, but in fact, they double down. That's true across the board. I think this is because, humans evolved in small hunter-gatherer groups where the survival of the fittest was the survival of the fittest group, joined together cooperatively. And so we feel at a really core level how important it is to our survival to have that group belonging. Humans need belonging as least as much as we need food, water, and shelter, and I would say probably more. Probably more. So if it's not already clear, I want to underscore this point that I'm not trying to blame either side. This is true for all of us. If we change our context, we would likely respond like them. Our side would probably respond like the other side. And I mean this in the most scary and disconcerting way. If the Electoral College elected more liberals disproportionately, unfairly, I would likely support it. I don't think I would. Because it goes against my stated value of inclusive democracy. But I just told you what the science says. And there was a time in America where the majority supported the institution of chattel slavery. And in that situation, I would reason that a Margaret Mead type small group of committed individuals needed to change that. If a majority opposed marriage equality, and I could find a way as a minority to bring about marriage equality, I bet I would do it. And the only reason I wouldn't is not because it would be wrong to, but because I don't think it really works. Okay? See the Civil War, which I would argue changed very little. Thus the need for the civil rights movement almost 100 years later, the nonviolent civil rights movement that did change hearts and minds. So if now apply my views on marriage equality and the temptation to win that even without a majority, my committed abolitionist views of slavery, which most people share these days, now apply that to abortion. Now conservative acceptance of subverting democracy to right a perceived moral wrong makes a lot more sense. I still don't agree with it, but it makes sense. I strongly oppose troops being sent into American cities like LA and DC and Chicago, especially when the local government and most of the local people oppose it. But I have to admit, I fully support and agree with the federal troops who were sent into the South during the civil rights movement to ensure the integration of public schools, even though the local government and people didn't want that. I want us I don't think I'm alone in this, what I said at the beginning. I want my values to win. I believe passionately in those values. This is part of what I mean when I say y'all means all. I mean, I want my values of inclusion to win. So this is challenging, right? And a challenging part of this, I just want to point out that an increase in polarization isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes polarization is a necessary part of a movement building to transform a harmful status quo. From our shared UU values, we say, we transform the world with liberating love. That's from the purposes section of our UU values. We transform the world with liberating love. So I do want to point out that we have come a long way, and that when I was young, the world was a lot different. When I lived in Nebraska, when I was in junior high school, there was still black radio and white radio. People are nodding their heads, you remember that. I had to listen to public radio to hear R&B music in Nebraska. I'm just saying, like, you wouldn't have to listen to public radio to hear a popular hip-hop or R&B artist today. But I had to listen from like midnight to 4 a.m. I mean, it wasn't even prime time. Just to step across in the smallest way the racial lines in our culture at that time. And homophobia was so rampant that when my child came to me in 6th grade and started talking about some of the homophobia she was experiencing, my first reaction was like, in my mind, was like, honey, that's as good as it gets. Like, you just have to put up with that, right? Because that's what I had to do. That's what everybody in my generation had to do. But it's not as true anymore, thank goodness. I lived in high school and college in Columbia, Maryland, part of the time at least, initially. At that time, Columbia, Maryland, which is a planned community, was the interracial marriage capital of the United States. It had the highest percentage of interracial marriages. I don't imagine that's true today. You know why? Because interracial marriage is one of the fastest growing things in our nation. Like, it's happening all over the place. That's amazing shift in my lifetime. And I'm not saying that they are not coming for gay marriage, but it is still the law of the land. And according to Gallup polls in 1996, 68% of Americans opposed same-sex marriage. Take that in. In 1996, less than 30 years ago, 68% of Americans opposed same-sex marriage. Only 27% supported it. Today, in 2025, that's completely reversed. 68% of Americans support same-sex marriage being legal and available in this country. That's a remarkable change. And that change isn't going away. Those numbers have stayed relatively, it's down from 71%, but that's a small dip in the last few years. So I want to go back to the beginning of the sermon. The only thing, right, because the majority, we have made a lot of change. We have transformed the world with liberating love, and we had to step into being polarized to some degree to do it. But I do want to say the only thing that can take away gay marriage is minority rule, right? Is a highly partisan Supreme Court that doesn't reflect the American people, and that is the world we live in right now. I am scared. Scared that all that we accomplished might be taken away. So this is why we need to commit to consciously cultivating and building a larger tent, to building belonging, to building solidarity. And most of what I shared with you about how polarization works and the stacking of identities and that science I mentioned comes from Ezra Klein's book, Why We Are Polarized. I have to tell you, when I got to the very small section at the end where he proposes solutions, I was really depressed. I mean, the easiest solution would be to change those structures, but that doesn't seem like we have the power to do that, right? A new constitutional convention where all these states would give up their unfair advantage with the Electoral College. So we need to make that bigger tent. It's the only way. We need to consciously cultivate solidarity. And by solidarity, I don't mean a reactive solidarity. That's happening right now, too, that tries to entrench oppressive status quos, current status quos, and past status quos. But we need a transformative solidarity. And this is the tricky part. We need to both, as I said at the beginning, be even more resolute about our values. Even more resolute about our values. But at the same time, we need, as Bell Hooks said, to choose love as we go about making that bigger tent. In the civil rights movement, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. didn't stop opposing evil, but he always believed in the possibility of redemption for segregationists, for racists, for those of us who are just quietly complicit in segregation and racism. We need to do that too. We need to love the people. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. But even more, we need to be even more loving, but at the same time be even more resolute about our values. So in the book Solidarity, they talk about practicing the virtues of solidarity. Have you ever chosen a few core values to center your life? Like, have you ever seen those like parenting books or personal growth books that say, okay, you need to choose these values? Maybe it's family and health and wholeness, and then you focus on your family and your health, and or maybe it's playfulness, equity, and partnership. Have you ever done that? Am I the only one? No, some of us have done that. So I usually end up with a bunch of C's: connection, compassion, care, collaboration, creativity. But what I never end up with is commitment or courage. But I tell you what, courage is on my list right now. Right now, I'm thinking a lot about how we need a long-term commitment to the work of dismantling oppression and building an accessible and inclusive society where all thrive. We need to be courageous right now in this moment to meet the urgent needs, and we need to be committed for the very long term and laying the groundwork for as long as it takes, whether it's 2 years or 10 years or 50 years or generations. Courage and commitment. Because solidarity doesn't just happen. We need to consciously cultivate the connections into partnerships, into collective action rooted in common values, common needs, common goals, and that takes courage and commitment. Now, most of the other virtues of solidarity, I'm happy to say, map pretty well onto our 6 shared UU values. Justice is paramount, a commitment to justice. I've talked a lot about that already. Hospitality is another virtue. In the book, they talk about Aristotle when they talk about hospitality and his views on friendship, the virtue of friendship, and that Aristotle described the virtue of friendship as wanting for your friend what you want for yourself. Imagine applying that to your neighbor, to your fellow citizen, and wanting for them what you want for yourself. And the Solidarity book is clear that our motivation for this generosity isn't altruism. It's rooted in the acknowledgement of our interdependence. It's rooted in the fact that we cannot fully flourish unless everyone is flourishing. Any flourishing that comes at the expense of others is fleeting and fragile. So because of that interdependence, another one of our UU values, we are called to always seek to expand the circle of inclusion, particularly for those who are most marginalized, but also, if we're going to effectively protect the most vulnerable, hospitality, generosity, interdependence means that we need to reach out to people who are apathetic and even to those who are opposed to our views. And to do that, we need humility and curiosity. Curiosity, by the way, is mentioned in our UU value of pluralism. And the kind of humility we're talking about here when we're building solidarity is humility that knows we don't know all the answers. Humility that knows even that thing that we're absolutely certain about, we might be wrong about, or at least partly wrong about. Remember what I said earlier about how our group identities distort our vision of facts. We need to be humble. And when we're humble like that, I'm going to go home and listen to some Kendrick Lamar. We need to be humble. When we're humble, it allows us to open up in curiosity. It allows us to open up to listening deeply. Last fall around this same time, I preached about deep canvassing. We all need to be engaged in this practice, but not just when we're canvassing, but in everyday life, with our neighbors, with our family, with our friends. So I'm going to go over the 3 steps of that practice. It begins with listening deeply, not to other people's political positions, but to the experiences that form the backbones of their lives, to the stories of their greatest joys and their most profound sorrows. I said it earlier, our sharing of joys and sorrows in our service each Sunday is a deep spiritual practice, and it's a practice of solidarity. We listen first and foremost, and only after listening till we get to the second step, which is sharing our stories and the stories of those we love. And connecting not along or even across political lines, but connecting through empathy, through our shared humanity, with love, curiosity, and respect for the other person and ourselves. And after listening to the other person's stories, their most profound experiences of joy and sorrow, and opening up and courageously, vulnerably sharing our story, our profound experiences of joy and sorrow that have led us to the values and beliefs we have today, only then do we enter into something that might resemble argumentation, though it really isn't arguing at all. It's a kind of connecting the dots, building on that shared humanity to see if through our conversation we can come to new understandings together, now that we've connected based on our bedrock values and life experiences. And maybe in that way, we come to new understandings about transgender folk or immigrants or a just and fair political process and our deep commitment to it. So I just want to underscore this a little bit more as I close. We need to practice welcoming divergent viewpoints, really welcoming them, not trying to prove them wrong. We need to welcome divergent viewpoints within our identity group and our communities and outside of our identity group with others beyond our normal circles. As our UU value of pluralism puts it, we embrace our commonalities and our differences with love, curiosity, and respect. So don't try to change people's minds, not with facts and figures, not even really trying to change their minds, but really just inviting them into a sharing of their identity and the life experiences that form that identity, and then appeal to that deepest part of them that believes in basic human dignity for all, because most people believe in that. Don't believe the rhetoric that either the right or the left is hell-bent on political violence. There are people at the fringes, for sure, on both sides. But most Americans believe in basic human dignity for all and for a world where everyone flourishes and thrives. So let's reach out on that common ground and consciously cultivate solidarity and making a bigger tent, drawing the circle wide and then drawing it wider still. May it be so, and may we be among those who make it so.
Please rise now in body or in spirit and join in our closing words. I invite you, as we extinguish our chalice, to join me in our community blessing with these words of David Bumba, slightly adapted. This church is dedicated to the proposition that by celebrating our differences and embracing our diversity, we honor the unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity. Now that we've gathered together in this welcoming and inclusive spiritual home, Let us go out into the world inspired to share our values.